Welcome, everyone. This brief guide is for parents who might not have sent a child to university before, or for carers who are in the same position. I was the first person in the history of my family to go to university, and my son is going this year. So between that and many years of university teaching, I have a good idea about some of the things that some of you might be worrying about, and I'm hoping to set your mind at rest. So I think one of the important things to underscore is that young people who are going to university are adults, but they're young adults. They're in the transitional phase between childhood and adulthood, and we really do recognise that at university. But parents have many worries, and these are the ones that I hear most often when I talk to parents on open days. About homesickness, about how they'll get up out of bed in the morning. That's one for my son, I can tell you. What happens if you live on pot noodle and toast? How will you make friends? How will your young person cope with their dyslexia if they have that kind of issue, or with mental health problems, for example? Should they be coming home? What will they do if they get ill? Who do you talk to? Can you talk to somebody if they have problems? Basically, what can you do to help make going to university easier for them and to allay your own fears about it? Here's what we know from our long experience of teaching, talking to our students and listening to the feedback we get from our student mentors, and I'll come to the student mentor a bit later on. Here's what we know. The first weeks of university are enjoyable, but they're a real challenge for young people. And kids put a brave face on things, don't they? They keep that smile on, and they secretly think that they're the only one with secretly worries. But in fact, everybody's a little bit worried when they start university, and acknowledging that and seeing it in other people is a really important thing. Homesickness is widespread. Many students don't expect it's going to happen to them. They're floored by it, actually, and are kind of surprised to feel homesick. Many are very worried about looking after themselves properly. Things that it's easy to think might be trivial: shopping, cooking, money management, washing their clothes. These are all things they worry about. And they certainly feel the loss of the supervision they've had in their lives from their parents, from their carers, from school, in terms of, getting up in the morning, organising their day, managing their deadlines, and so on. These aren't trivial things. They make a huge difference to the experience of a first-year student, and they can all be prepared for at home. So the first thing to say is a bit of advice about money. Quite often in week one, there's a struggle to get bank accounts set up. If your young person has a bank account set up well in advance and has been using it, managing whatever's in there independently for themselves, that's a really good, idea. Get that done early on. Also, encourage your young person to get a part-time job. Jobs are really useful for building skills and independence before university, and most students who come to Newcastle need a part-time job to help make ends meet. A job at home is a good way to help in finding a job once a student has started at university. We estimate that our students do about, most of them, an average of 15 hours a week on top of their study. Not all students, obviously, and some do more, but that's a kind of average. We recommend paid work. It structures the week and it fosters time management skills that are quite difficult if you don't have these kind of punctuated things in your day that you need to be doing alongside your studies. I'd also say about money that some students and sometimes parents are very anxious about the student loan, but the student loan will not be paid back for some time. You can go and check on the gov.uk here about repaying the student loan. Virtually everybody who's coming into university as a student leaving school is on Plan 2 on the student loan system. And the formula there is that you need to be earning £511 a week to start paying it back. And for many students, that's not going to come until some years after they've graduated. So yes, they need to be careful about their money, but you and they shouldn't be over anxious about their debt burden. Something that might seem a lot more trivial than the student loan, but actually is really important, is cooking. Most students will come to university and they'll go into university accommodation, usually a sort of shared flat for sort of 6 or 8 people. They'll have a kitchen and they'll share, and they'll cook for themselves and for each other. Now, for some students, this is a massive worry. Some would literally live on toast and takeaways. It's expensive, and poor food means poor health and poor self-confidence. Many new students don't actually know how to turn the hob on when they get here. They've never cooked for themselves. Most have never looked inside an oven. So one thing you can really do is to help your young person develop a simple repertoire of easy and cheap recipes, by which I mean pasta. And, the baked potato. If you can bake a potato, if you can open that oven door and bake a potato, you will never starve and you will save yourself a fortune. As I said earlier, many students worry about homesickness. They do suffer from it, but actually much of it is fear of the unknown. They focus on home because they're afraid of their new circumstances. Make sure your young person has spent some time away from home before starting university. And I don't just mean on, say, extended family holidays or on school trips. I mean time alone with their friends. Buy them a youth hosteling association card, for example, and a young person's rail card. Send them away for weekends with their mates. It's cheap, it's fun, it builds independence. And if your young person chooses Newcastle, then it's a really good idea for them to spend one of those weekends actually coming up to Newcastle. Once they've got their place, come up, have a look round, get used to the city. It will all seem a lot more familiar, and they'll have done the travel, of course, before they get here and know how to get to and from home. Quite often students take gap years, and parents often ask me if that's a good idea. It depends on how they're spent, to be honest, but they do generally help, however they're spent, with the transition to university. If your young person really is anxious about university or about their readiness for independence, then a gap year well spent can be a very good idea to ease that transition, and you can think about it. This slide concerns students who might have disabilities or specific learning difficulties like dyslexia, for example, or other physical or mental health issues. Many students find themselves in this position, and the key here is to work with your chosen university well in advance. So in Newcastle, we have student wellbeing, and that provides counsellors, specialist learning advisors, and one-to-one support. For all students who have particular needs, we draw up things called student support plans, SSPs, and they identify the student's needs, outline specific support requirements for tutors and teachers and so on. A lot of this can be done in advance. This eases the transition to university as well. Do note that students with specific learning difficulties like dyslexia and dyspraxia, it's a good idea for them to have an adult, by which I mean a 16-plus diagnostic assessment, rather than sending them to university with an assessment they have when they were very young. This can be done at university if it's not in place when the student arrives, but it's easier, and again eases the transition if that's all been sorted out. For all students, wherever they go, and as soon as they have a university address, do make sure they have registered with the GP in whatever city that they find themselves in. All right, let's think about the build-up to coming to university. This can be an anxious time, but we have some things that help with that. So at Newcastle in late August, all incoming students in archaeology or in history or in classics are allocated 2 key people. A student mentor, that's a student in stage 3, the 3rd year of their degree, who's recruited by us, trained by the university to be a friendly face, a non-academic staff friendly face for students coming into the 1st year. Students are also allocated a personal tutor. That's a member of the academic staff. I'm an archaeologist, so the example I'm giving here is archaeology, who will be the student's advocate through their time at university. And that advocacy is obviously academic. We help students to achieve to their best potential. We help with career advice, but we're also there to support them through any personal or health issues. So yeah, I like the word advocate. Both the student mentor and the tutor will contact the new student by email in advance of their arrival, so they already have had the opportunity to make contact with a member of academic staff and with a student who's already got experience of the university. We also ease the transition to university through induction week, often known as Freshers' Week at universities. This is carefully designed to have some of the baseline study skills that we want to our students to be familiar with, and to do the necessary admin and the paperwork, to be a fully signed up student and to have chosen your options and so on. There's a lot of getting to know you activities for students to get to know each other and to get to know staff. So all students in history, classics and archaeology, at some point in this week, they'll have a day out with academic staff and with all of the other new intake and their student mentors to a local heritage site. So, for example, Jarrow Hall or Beamish Museum or Wallington Hall. The archaeology students go to Jarrow Hall, where there's a reconstructed Anglo-Saxon village, and they try out new skills like stone carving, or you can see here, making pottery. These are great icebreaker events. Many students make new friendships here that will last them right through university and beyond. In this first week and throughout the students' time at university, the personal tutor plays a key role for them. They'll meet the personal tutor on day one, the day they arrive in induction week. They'll have a one-to-one meeting with them in the following week. And we set 3 formal meetings a year as our kind of baseline, but all tutors have a sort of open door policy for their personal tutees, and we see our personal tutees when they need us. We do monitor attendance very carefully at Newcastle. Poor attendance at classes is a key sign that something might be going wrong. So we register our students very carefully and keep an eye on that. Students also have something called a DPD, a degree program director. And that person will work closely with the head of subject, the head of archaeology or the head of history or the head of classics to identify and support struggling students in our school. All right, so your young person has arrived. They've got through induction week and they've got to settle down. What can you do to help that first few weeks? First thing I'd say is treat no news as good news. Don't expect them to phone you or text you all the time. They need to kind of make not a break with home, but to accept that they're in a new world, if you see what I mean. Even if they want to come home, I would discourage it, at least for the first month. That might sound hard, but it's a key bit of advice in terms of helping them to settle, for them to get settled in, find their routine, meet their friends, know their hall, know what their academic routine looks like. If they do that, they will settle better. And really don't expect them to come home regularly. I know I've said students get paid work, and they do, but university is a full-time experience. They have lots of classes, they have lots of independent study. And if they're not at university, then they're missing out on the academic and the social side of it. So make sure that they know that university is where they should be. The occasional phone call is a good thing. It reminds them that you're there. But keeping it occasional gives them the space to explore their new world and to feel confident about it. So sometimes things do go wrong. Okay, students can have problems, of course they can. Generally, those problems can be fixed. The key person there is a personal tutor. We really encourage students to foster good relationships with their personal tutor, to keep them in the loop about their problems and so on. Parents sometimes wonder why, when a student has problems, we don't contact them, the parents, directly. And they wonder whether they can contact us if they have, specific problems about their offspring. There's a legal issue here once a person turns 18 about confidentiality. We are not allowed to contact a student's parents. We have to treat them in this case as adults. But if we're really worried about students, we can ask them to obtain written permission or to give us written permission so that we can liaise with you over very pressing issues. But, I don't want to sound doom-laden here. Things don't go wrong very often, or if they do and they're picked up quickly, they can very easily be sorted. The personal tutor is the student's advocate and trying to find a solution. So if your young person finds themselves in a spot of bother, make sure that they talk to their personal tutor. These are the things that your youth needs to survive university. An alarm clock, I know they've got one on their phone, get them another one. They need to learn about cooking. Buy them a sandwich machine, it's such a good thing. They need, if at all possible, a good laptop, good IT, and a waterproof jacket, especially if they're coming to Newcastle. And feel assured that we will look after them. They are, as I said at the beginning, young adults, and we think about them that way. And the time at university, it goes by so fast. 1 minute it's Freshers Week, and the next minute they're graduating. As you can see here from a recent photograph, they will have a brilliant time. It will be with them for the rest of their lives. And even if the first few weeks seem a little bit wobbly, be reassured that in the vast majority of cases, your young person is going to have the time of their lives. I hope that was helpful.